Welcome to the From Center Ice Cozy Cast. My name is Courtney, and while it might not be Monday, it is Tuesday, and there's preseason hockey on, so we're gonna get nice and cozy here on this Cozy Cast. I was going to record one yesterday on Monday, but I could not stop sneezing all morning and all early afternoon, so it's officially allergy season once again now that the season has switched over to fall. And with that fall season switch, it's also been rather chilly here in Northern Illinois. I don't know if wherever you guys are, if you're here in Illinois or elsewhere, if once the season switched, it also got super cold for you, but it's been in the 50s and 60s here, and the same week, but before it officially became fall, it hit like the upper 80s or 90 degrees here. So it was very weird, and still trying to get used to that. But of course, with that comes allergy season. So that thwarted my plans yesterday. So the Cozy Cast is being filmed today on Tuesday, and that's all right, because not only do we have more preseason hockey on like we've had all weekend and last night, but we have Blackhawks preseason hockey tonight, their first game of the preseason. I am so excited, but before we get to that, some housekeeping. If you are new here or not aware of the From Center Ice Cozy Cast or Happy Hour, it is a 1-hour podcast where I am here to kick off your week with some hockey news, and then the happy hour is a Friday afternoon/evening to wind down your week with some hockey news. And of course, since I started recording, here comes my cat yelling at me because I am talking to the microphone and not to him. Come on, buddy. You gonna come talk to your fans? You wanna say hello? Yeah? You're joining for this one? Alright, there he is. Of course, rubbing on the cords, as always. The more things change, the more they stay the same, right? Oy. There's also plastic over here, and he loves chomping on plastic to drive me crazy. And that that was his debut for the day, I guess. He's done. He didn't want to even talk while he was over here. But anyway, this is the From Center Ice Cozy Cast. We kicked it off with my cat coming up here to join us, but now it's time to talk about hockey, and I briefly mentioned it, but preseason is here. Has your team played a game yet? I know there's some teams who have not played yet, like the Blackhawks. I think the Carolina Hurricanes are another team who has yet to play. I believe they also play tonight. I'm not sure how many others are left who haven't played a game. Maybe Detroit. The Blackhawks play them tomorrow. Tonight they play the St. Louis Blues. Of course, the first game of the preseason, the first game of Blackhawks hockey we have had in months. And we have to see the St. Louis Blues and Jordan Binnington, the team that drove me nuts in that second round against the Colorado Avalanche. But it is what it is, because we're in the Central Division, so we have to see them a lot. But if your team has started their preseason schedule already, how are they doing? I watched the 2 Toronto games. They had a good old split squad outing, or outings, I guess, plural, with the Ottawa Senators on Saturday. They won the first one, lost the second one, and they play again tomorrow. Other teams have already played a few games. It's not a very structured schedule because this is the NHL. It's kind of all over the place, but it's been a lot of fun so far watching these games. I'm just so glad to have hockey back on TV, NHL hockey at that. It's also a time for me to get back into the swing of things. I know I recorded a happy hour, I think 2 weeks ago now. Something like that. Wow, time really flies. And I was going to record a Cozy Cast that Monday. Didn't work out that way. I was going to record one during the week. Didn't. Friday came back around, and I've had the happy hours and Cozy Casts lined up, so they are the same number. So I started on a Friday with the happy hour, so that was episode 1, and then that following Monday was Cozy Cast 1. And so now if I do it all out of order, the numbers will be all thrown off. That will mess with my brain. That's just how it works. So once those dates lapsed, then I couldn't just jump back in with a back-to-back happy hour episode. So here we are at the start of this week with a Cozy Cast here so my numbers can stay aligned. And welcome to the chaos that is my brain. But again, that is what this preseason is for, getting back into the swing of things. That's what I was trying to do this weekend. I was tweeting about some of the games I was watching, trying to ramp that back up. I wrote a pregame players to watch article about the second Toronto game on Saturday because I wasn't sure what the roster was going to be for the first game. Kind of hard to pick 3 players to watch if you don't know who is playing. After I record this, I will be writing one for the Blackhawks game tonight, since they did just drop that roster for me nice and early here in the afternoon, thank goodness. I'm recording this around 1:15 p.m. Of course, it always takes a while to upload to YouTube because it's a big file. So this will probably be up on YouTube maybe when the game is starting tonight. But the audio-only version should be up a little earlier, hopefully. But I will be writing a players to watch piece about the Blackhawks. But I will also go over who is in the lineup tonight once I get to that. But yeah, it's just been a really good time getting back into it, getting ready for hockey season. And, you know, some people don't like watching preseason games because it's not your full roster. You don't see them at full strength. The games don't matter, of course, thankfully for some teams. But I always enjoy it, at least for a little while, because I am a fan of the American Hockey League as well. Of course, IceHogs season ticket holder. Again, if you are new here, there will be a lot of IceHogs coverage on this channel, as well as other American Hockey League news if you want to keep up with your prospects. So it's nice to see those young kids get into game action in preseason games. That's always fun. See some of the guys who were just recently drafted. Yeah, it's fun, but it does kind of get old after a while. You want the games to actually matter. You want them to be playing for something. You want to see what your team is going to look like for sure on opening night. But since we haven't had a Blackhawks game since, gosh, when did the regular season end? May? I think? I don't know, with the whole condensed schedule and everything being thrown off, I don't even remember when the regular season ended now. Was it April? Was it May? I don't know. It doesn't matter. But we haven't had a Blackhawks game since then because, of course, they did not make the playoffs. And I'm very excited to see them on the ice tonight. The team is very different, so that will be interesting. It's going to take some getting used to, but there are some young guys in the lineup as well. And I look forward to that. It's going to be so nice seeing them out there again. It's going to feel a little more normal around here with some Blackhawks hockey on the TV. It's going to be a time for me to really figure out what I want to talk about this season when it comes to making videos and with these podcasts and all that. Of course, with the Cozy Casts and the Happy Hour, I try to cover as much of the stuff going on around the league as possible so that you guys can stay up to date and it's not just me sitting here ranting about the Blackhawks and the Leafs and the IceHogs, because I do that in my post-game videos. So I try to diversify it here a little bit on these podcasts, and it helps me stay up to date as well because I love knowing everything there is to know about what is going on in the hockey world. It's maybe to a fault since I spend all of my time doing hockey stuff during the season, but it's something that I enjoy. And if you are here listening to a hockey podcast, I'm kind of preaching to the choir there because you know exactly what I'm talking about. So that's what this is used for. But with this season being so different for the Blackhawks since we haven't really been through the rebuild phase yet. It's been teased over and over again for many a season, and it just never happened under Stan Bowman, which is a weird name to even say at this point that feels so far removed from this team. But he always said we're going to kind of rebuild, and then he would downgrade that to retool, and then nothing of the sort would ever happen. So once he was relieved of his duties, thankfully, at the beginning of last season, Kyle Davidson came in, said we're going to go through the rebuild process, really tear this thing down, and start fresh, because what was going on here was not working. We had some fantastic players, and I don't know that I will get over the whole DeBrincat trade through this season. Again, I understand it, sort of. Doesn't mean I have to like it, much like the Brandon Hagel trade, because it just sucks seeing Cat playing with the Senators. And it was weird watching that on Saturday when they took on the Toronto Maple Leafs. He played in the early game, and it was just so weird. I didn't like it. It didn't look right. It didn't feel right. But it's just something we have to get over. Kirby Dach was in the lineup for the Montreal Canadiens last night. That was also very, very weird. It's an interesting season. So we are officially in that rebuild, and the roster is interesting, to say the least. A goalie tandem of Peter Mrazek, or Mazarek, if you're Gary Bettman. Peter Mrazek and Alex Stalock is going to be interesting, to say the least. That might just be the word for this upcoming Blackhawks season, is interesting. But with the way that Kyle Davidson wants to use the American Hockey League as a development league, finally, which is what it's there for, and the Blackhawks just have not done up until now, which is why we don't have a whole lot of prospects who are really pushing to make the NHL and make a huge impact right off the jump. There are a lot of veteran players on this team who aren't going to be around for a while, like the goaltenders that we have. They did sign Max Domi and Andreas Athanasiou to one-year deals, so whether they finish the year as Blackhawks or if they are deadline moves, that is yet to be seen. Do Patrick Kane and Jonathan Toews finish the season as Blackhawks? We'll see. We got Jack Johnson as a defenseman. It's just a very interesting roster full of older guys who may or may not be around for a while, and we will see the kids. They will be interjected here and there throughout the season. Some might even make the team out of camp, and that would kind of force my hand into knowing what to talk about with this team, is following the development of the younger kids as they progress through their NHL season. That would make my job easier, but if we have a veteran-heavy roster with not a whole lot of exciting prospects playing, I'm not sure what the main talking points are going to be, because not a whole lot of it really matters when it comes down to it if these guys aren't going to be around. And the season, we want the Hawks to lose realistically so they can get a better draft pick. If they give up bad goals, well, doesn't really matter. So it's just going to be interesting. With Luke Richardson coming in and having the new coaching staff, one of the things to focus on will be the systems, and I know he's talked about wanting to have a more aggressive penalty kill, which thank goodness, because it's been very passive as of late, so that will be nice to see. That will also work really well for guys like Josiah Slavin, should he spend some time with the Blackhawks this year. He was really good at that in the American League for the IceHogs last year, had 3 shorthanded goals, and I know yesterday in practice he also scored a shorthanded goal. So things like that will work in the kids' favor. Just how often we see them in the NHL lineup, of course, that is yet to be seen. But following the system changes will be very interesting, especially on special teams. If we can get a good penalty kill, that would be very nice. Again, we want to lose games, but being able to not just hemorrhage goals when killing penalties would be very awesome. And seeing some sort of production on the power play and not just the same old setups every time they are out there would also be great, because it's very predictable and most of Blackhawks fans can tell you exactly what is going to happen on each play when they enter the zone on the power play. So if we can watch some of those things and see how those things change, that will be something to watch throughout the season, as well as monitoring how the kids do when they come up and they do play in the NHL. So it all starts tonight, really, with figuring out what to talk about. Again, during the preseason, it'll be a little bit more interesting because we have guys such as Kevin Korchinski, our first round pick that we chose with the Alex DeBrincat pick that we got. He's going to be in the lineup tonight, but when the season rolls around, he's going to go back to junior. So we will get to see him and some other younger guys in game action during the preseason. So that will be at least very exciting in a season that may not be that awesome for Blackhawks fans. It'll be interesting for me to have things to talk about, but watching the games may not be super interesting for a lot of people. So all of that being said, let's jump into some of the news from around the league. And since I last recorded, we have had some retirements, and I'm going to take a sip here before I get into that. I am drinking some apple cider today. I had a coffee earlier. I had a car appointment, had to get a recall part installed in my car, and that took about 3 hours, so that's why I'm recording this in the afternoon instead of the morning, and also why I'm drinking apple cider instead of another coffee. But I didn't just want to drink water, and I will get an energy drink after I film this to get me ready to watch the games tonight. But when it comes to retirement news, it was pretty much all about the defensemen here. So, Keith Yandle, 36 years old, broke the Iron Man streak this year and then was a healthy scratch in Philly. Which was a choice. I don't think many people around the hockey world agreed with it. Of course, it was a lost season for the Flyers. It didn't matter. They said they wanted to get younger kids into play. Dress them as a forward, you know? It's dumb. It's something that maybe fans also don't really care about with the Iron Man streak, and maybe people shouldn't care about it, but it's an interesting storyline, and when he was a healthy scratch, it was just kind of a bummer. He played 16 seasons in the NHL. He's 36 years old, and he finished his career with 1,109 regular season games, 103 goals, and 516 assists. He was a 3-time NHL All-Star, and again, holds the Iron Man streak. For now, Phil Kessel is right behind him. I believe he is less than 10 games away from tying Keith Yandle. So Phil Kessel playing this year with the Vegas Golden Knights, that will be a storyline to keep an eye on. And then we have PK Subban retiring after 13 seasons in the NHL. He's 33 years old. Most recently played with the New Jersey Devils. He was drafted by the Montreal Canadiens, traded to the Nashville Predators in the Shea Weber deal, and then went to New Jersey. He played 824 regular season games. He had 115 goals and 352 assists. He won the Norris Trophy in the 2012-13 season and was a finalist in 2015 and in 2018. He was a 3-time NHL All-Star and won the Olympic gold medal with Canada in 2014. PK Subban will probably be joining a broadcast because he is quite the personality, and that is a job that he will just be absolutely perfect for. He is a fun guy, and he has done some broadcast work in the past when his season was over, so it will be interesting to see where he ends up, but he will be entertaining hockey fans wherever he goes. And then, last but not least, when it comes to the defensemen retiring, Zdeno Chara hangs them up. At 45 years old, after 24 NHL seasons, Zdeno Chara is out of the league, and that's just, it's a bummer. Of course, everybody's career has to end at some time, but he's just one of those guys it felt like was gonna be around forever, and he basically was, in hockey terms, retiring at 45. But he retired with 1,680 regular season games, 209 goals, and 471 assists. He won the Norris Trophy in the 2008-9 season, and he was a finalist in 2004, 2008, 2011, 2012, and 2014. Of course, he won the Stanley Cup with the Boston Bruins in 2011. He made another Cup final appearance in 2013 with Boston against the Chicago Blackhawks, and then again in 2019 against the St. Louis Blues. He was a 5-time NHL All-Star, and of course had that big, heavy shot, and I believe he won the hardest shot competition at least once, if it wasn't Shea Weber who won every time. But Zdeno Chara, an absolute legend, definitely a future Hall of Famer, hangs them up. And then, in news a little bit closer to home and not a defenseman, Kurtis Gabriel, 29 years old, has called it a career. He played parts of 5 seasons in the NHL, playing 51 games and scoring 2 goals and 3 assists. He spent a lot of time in the American Hockey League, most recently with the Rockford IceHogs, and was very effective in the playoffs this year for the Piggies. So good luck to Kurtis in retirement land, and good luck to Subban and Yandle and Chara as they also embark on this next part of their life outside of the NHL. So, when it comes to the complete opposite of retiring, we've also had some key signings since I last recorded. So Mikey Anderson, 23-year-old for the Kings, signed a 1-year, $1 million contract. Evan Rodriguez, 28 years old, went to the Colorado Avalanche from the Pittsburgh Penguins, 1 year, $2 million. Jordan Kyrou signed an 8-year extension with the St. Louis Blues, so that kicks in next year with an average cap hit of $8.125 million per season. Tyler Mott, 27 years old, signed with the Senators, 1 year, $1.3 million. Sean Durzi, 23-year-old with the Kings, signed a 2-year contract worth $1.7 million per season. Barrett Hayton with the Arizona Coyotes, 22 years old, 2 years, $1.775 million per season. Nikita Soshnikov comes back to the NHL, signing with the New York Islanders. He is 28 years old, signed for 1 year at $750,000. Corey Schneider, also getting another contract with the Islanders. He played with Bridgeport last season. 1 year at $750,000. Ryan Mcleod with the Edmonton Oilers. He is 22 years old, signed a 1-year deal at $798,000. And today, Spencer Knight, goaltender for the Florida Panthers, signed a 3-year extension. He is 22 years old, and that cap hit is $4.5 million per season, which is an interesting contract to me. Of course, it's an extension. It kicks in next year. But he didn't spend the entire year in the NHL this season. When he did, he had fairly good numbers. He had a good record in the NHL. But investing $4.5 million in a goaltender who didn't get the whole year in the NHL is interesting. So I'm assuming that that is their plan this year, to run Bobrovsky and Spencer Knight for the entire season. Granted, they both stay healthy. Hopefully they do. And just hope that that deal ends up being worth it when it kicks in. And I'm sure it will be. Spencer Knight is a very good goaltender. But that was just a bit shocking to me. But then when it comes to big contract extensions, we go back out west to the Colorado Avalanche, who locked up Nathan McKinnon and made him the highest paid player in the National Hockey League. Of course, that extension kicks in next year. It is for 8 years. He is only 27 years old. Plenty of amazing hockey left in front of McKinnon, but it has a cap hit of $12.6 million per season. That is a big boy contract. So congratulations to McKinnon and to the Avalanche for getting that deal all signed and tidied up. Of course, that will be, or is, I guess, great news for Avalanche fans. They don't have to worry about it throughout the season. They don't have to worry about, is he going to stay? Is he going to go? Which it would be ridiculous if McKinnon decided to go elsewhere, since this Avs team is going to be very good again this season. But that is a contract that I know a lot of people were waiting to see what it would be. Would he be the highest paid player in the NHL? And we have the answer, and the answer is yes. Yes, indeed, he is. Whew, that is a big one. I thought I would go over some of the PTOs as well. These guys don't have contracts yet, but they are practicing with NHL teams and getting into some preseason action. I know I was curious which guys had signed PTOs, so I will list them here for you guys. And up first, we have the Edmonton Oilers signing Jake Tannen to a PTO, which is just a headache, really, and shows that the Oilers don't really care who they're signing, as long as maybe they will put up some points for you, such as Evander Kane. Jake Tannen has his own issues. I'm not going to go into that whole story. If you are curious, go ahead and look it up. Just know that it involves sexual assault, so there is that. Jimmy Vesey signed a PTO with the New York Rangers, where he started out. Nate Thompson signed with the LA Kings. Anton Strawman is on a PTO in Boston. Michael Stone with Calgary. Derek Stepan with Carolina, where he played last year, but now he's on a PTO. Eric Stahl is on a PTO in Florida with the Panthers. Daniel Sprong with the Seattle Kraken. Zach Senyshyn with the New Jersey Devils. Antoine Roussel with the Philadelphia Flyers, which is a great place for him, really. They're just very fitting for each other. Up next, William Rydell with the Vegas Golden Knights, and I didn't know who Rydell was when I saw this signing. So he's a 25-year-old defenseman. He joined the Lehigh Valley Phantoms in the American League for 2 games after his Ohio State season ended last year, where he was the captain. And he spent 4 years prior to that with Lake Superior State, so a guy just kicking off his NHL or American League professional career. He was on a PTO with the Vegas Golden Knights. Victor Rask, signed a PTO with the Columbus Blue Jackets. Tyler Pitlick in St. Louis. Dmitry Osipov with the Anaheim Ducks. Of course, he was with the IceHogs last season, and he's been around for a few years in the IceHogs team, and we're going to miss him. Osipov is a fun guy to watch. If Anaheim does sign him, he probably plays in the American League, but he's a good guy to have around, a nice guy, and if you're into fights, well, he will throw some punches for you. So good luck to Dimitri out in Anaheim. I hope he gets a contract and sticks around, so we will just have to see how that goes. James Neal signed a PTO with Columbus. Sonny Milano, finally, there was some movement there with him. He signed a PTO with the Calgary Flames. Up next was another guy who I didn't know of, Kelty Jerry Leon with the Boston Bruins. He's a 22-year-old forward. Last season, he mostly spent with the Maine Mariners in the ECHL. He had 19 goals and 16 assists there for 35 points. He played 2 games with the Providence Bruins, where he scored 1 goal, and 4 games with the Abbotsford Canucks, where he didn't register a point. Previously, he spent 5 years in the WHL, starting with the Tri-City Americans, then going to Kamloops, then Lethbridge, and then finally finishing out his junior career with the Seattle Thunderbirds. So that is him, and he is on a PTO with the Boston Bruins. Up next, we have Thomas Hickey with the New Jersey Devils, Josh Healy with the Anaheim Ducks, Liam Howell with the Columbus Blue Jackets, Scott Harrington with the San Jose Sharks, Ben Harper with Columbus, Andrew Hammond with Florida, Rocco Grimaldi with Anaheim, Christopher Gibson with Arizona, Brent Gates with Anaheim, Alex Galchenyuk in Colorado, which is also an interesting one for sure, Dylan Ferguson with Toronto, Cody Eakin with Calgary, Grigory Dronov with Carolina, another kid who I didn't know of. He's a 24-year-old defenseman and until now has played in the KHL. So be interesting to see if Carolina gives him a contract, or maybe he signs an American League deal with the Chicago Wolves if Carolina doesn't see him making the jump to the NHL this year, but they want to keep him around. That's also an option. Let's see here. Jason Demers signed a PTO with the Edmonton Oilers, Danny DeKeyser with the Vancouver Canucks, Calvin DeHaan, previously, of course, of the Chicago Blackhawks, goes back to his previous team with the Carolina Hurricanes on a PTO. Michael Dalcol with the Ottawa Senators, Alex Chason with the Arizona Coyotes, Nicholas Brouillard with the Anaheim Ducks. He is a 27-year-old defenseman, spent the last 2 years with the San Diego Gulls, so a team that Anaheim is, a player that Anaheim is familiar with there, but I didn't know who he was. Derek Brassard signed a PTO with Ottawa, Caleb Booth with Seattle, JF Berube signing a PTO also with the Florida Panthers, so they have Bobrovsky, they just signed Spencer Knight to that big extension. They have Andrew Hammond there on a PTO and JF Berube there on a PTO. So they're kind of hoarding the goalies a little bit. Nathan Beaulieu signed a PTO with the Anaheim Ducks, Matt Bartkowski with the Rangers, Zach Aston Reese with Toronto, and he looked pretty good in the preseason game he played. So that will be one to keep an eye on. And Artem Anisimov with the Philadelphia Flyers. So those are the PTOs that have been signed. If you were wondering about those guys signing contracts but hadn't heard anything, maybe they're on a PTO. And I'm going to take another sip of my apple cider here. And along with some of those signings and the PTOs and the retirement news, there's been a lot of news about injuries lately. We got the news out of Philly that Ryan Ellis is still injured and likely going to miss the entire season again. Sean Couturier has a herniated disc, and a hopeful timeline for him to return was 6 to 8 weeks. He could potentially come back sooner if the rehab on that goes well, or he could be out for months if he needs surgery. This is a very Philly situation where everything's just kind of up in the air. If his healing goes well, he'll be back sooner. Maybe he will be back on the timeline of 6 to 8 weeks. Or maybe he will need surgery and he'll just be out for months. Who knows? I mean, it's very Philly for you. I believe I talked about Duncan Keith retiring before. Of course, Chicago gets hit with the cap recapture penalty because, of course, they do. And he is joining the Oilers staff in a player development role. So he wanted to stick around with the Oilers organization, I guess, but he was just done playing and now joins the staff. So good for him. I heard on the Seattle broadcast last night, since they were playing Edmonton, that he had invited a bunch of the young prospects over to his house for dinner. So that was nice of Mr. Dunks. In other previous Blackhawk player news, Andrew Ladd with the Coyotes did not pass his physical coming into camp, so he is going to go on LTIR still with the knee injury. He did come back and play a bit last season, but right now, either he's not going to play this year or he's just going to keep rehabbing it and maybe hope to come back, which I don't know, but he's on IR. Gabriel Landeskog won't be skating anytime soon, and he's going to miss the start of the regular season, still dealing with some injuries that he was playing through in the playoffs and was dealing with last season. Marco Scandella of the St. Louis Blues will undergo hip surgery and be reevaluated in 6 months. So that's a big loss for them there on the blue line. And Alexei Toropchenko, also for the Blues, is having shoulder surgery and should return in November. So much like the guys over in Boston and Marchand, Grzelcyk, and I believe Charlie McAvoy, they're out until November, December-ish. There's a lot of guys missing some significant time here. Of course, Robin Leonard is missing the entire season because he had hip surgery. Nolan Patrick isn't playing the season for Vegas. I don't know if that's due to his migraine issue. Didn't really say. I'm assuming that's what it is, but he's out for the season. Carey Price potentially out for the entire season. Max Pacioretty out until the second half of the season with his Achilles surgery. So there's just a lot of injured players coming into this year. And you have to think that maybe a lot of it is due to the condensed schedule we've had these past 2 years and all of those rescheduled games from around Christmas time last season when Omicron really broke out and they had to reschedule all of those games and just shove them in somewhere. That really had to take a toll on these guys, and we're seeing that at the start of this season where a lot of players got fixed up in the off season, had surgery, but they're not ready to return yet. That also happened with Jake McCabe of the Blackhawks having surgery. It's just interesting. We're finally getting a more normal season this year. Hopefully. That's the plan. Unless there is another shutdown of the season, which God forbid that be the case. But they're starting on time, they're going to end on time, and it's not going to be so condensed with everything just packed together. So hopefully that will allow some of these guys more time in between games to heal up their bodies, and hopefully we don't have so many injuries going into next off season and then going into next season that they've had to get fixed over the off season. Let's just hope that with the hockey schedule kind of returning back to normal finally, that these players can also have their routines and habits kind of get back to normal. And that's really all we want here in the hockey world, right? Because sports are supposed to be an escape from everything happening in the real world, but when something as big as a pandemic affects the world, that obviously is going to affect the hockey world as well. And then we have to deal with all of this, everybody's schedules being thrown off, the cup being handed out at the end of June, everything being condensed up to the summer. You don't really get a whole long off season, and then we're just right back into it, and a bunch of teams are missing key players because of injuries. It's just a big bummer, but the teams are going to have to figure it out. Guys are going to have to step up, and we just hope that the rest of these players will be able to heal up and return soon. Another player who is coming off of an injury is Jacob Chychrun, defender for the Arizona Coyotes. He's 24 years old, already entering his 7th season in the NHL, which just seems crazy to me. It seems like just yesterday he was breaking into the league, but he's already played 337 regular season games. He's got 53 goals and 89 assists for 142 points as a defenseman. He's got a pretty good contract for those numbers, 3 years left at $4.6 million per season, and he wants to be traded to a contender. There was a lot of buzz last season about, will Jacob Chychrun be traded at the deadline? Will he be traded at the draft? Will he be traded? Blah, 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 over and over again. That was the big name to watch out for last season was, will Jacob Chychrun be moved? And he wasn't. Arizona held on to him. They didn't go out and get something for him. And now he has requested a trade out of Arizona to go to a contender because the Arizona Coyotes aren't going to be one of those for a while. So that's definitely going to be a storyline to follow and a blow for Arizona Coyotes fans. Of course, maybe you'll get something awesome in return and it won't turn out so horrible. But Coyotes fans, I just feel so bad for you guys. Nothing seems to work out correctly. You don't have a very well-run organization. Maybe things are turning around with the new ownership group that came in really not too long ago, all things considered. But playing at ASU this year, the roster's not that great. I mean, you had a lot of draft picks this year. You got some good players, but now your star defenseman wants to be traded to a contender, and you really can't blame him. So we'll have to see where Jacob Chychrun ends up and see what the Coyotes get in return. But teams who are contenders don't really have a whole lot to give up, especially right now. They like to hold on to those first-round draft picks for closer to the deadline. So is he a deadline move? Are we going to do this again this season going into the deadline? Will he be moved? Will he not be moved? I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Those talks are definitely going to be very loud surrounding the Blackhawks as well. They already have been ever since training camp opened up. It seems like all of the talk about Patrick Kane has really kicked up into like level 100 volume, and he keeps saying that he hasn't requested a trade yet or hasn't talked about it with Kyle, and who knows how much truth there is to that. I'm sure they've had some discussions about it, but he hasn't asked for a trade yet, and he has said pretty consistently that they want to wait till the beginning of the season and see how it goes. And if he wants to stay in Chicago, that's great. Or they want to see who the good teams are going to be so he can be traded to a team that potentially has a chance to make a run in the playoffs, make a run at the cup. Yeah, we'll have to see, but it'll suck if it happens, just like trading DeBrincat sucked, but we just have to go with it. So I guess that brings us around here to some Blackhawks talk, or more Blackhawks talk. I know I kicked off this episode talking about them a bit, But they do have their preseason game against the St. Louis Blues tonight at the United Center. And we have the lineup for the game. So on line number 1, we have Jonathan Toews centering Tyler Johnson and Taylor Radish. On line 2, we have Max Domi centering Patrick Kane and Andreas Athanasiou. That's going to be a very interesting line to watch. Patrick Kane's line is always pretty interesting, but the past few seasons we've been spoiled, and Patrick Kane's line has also featured Alex DeBrincat and him feeding DeBrincat for lots of goals. So we will see if Athanasiou or Domi can be the finisher on that line with Kaner setting them up. Or maybe this is the season when Kane just absolutely breaks out with the goal scoring and has a career high in goals and then decides he wants to be traded to a contender. Who knows? Who knows? But it will be an interesting line to watch, that's for sure. On line number 3, we have Cole Gutman centering Buddy Robinson and Colin Blackwell. Gutman is a young kid who they signed out of college, and he's really impressed in training camp as well as the rookie showcase. So he's going to be an interesting player to watch. He most likely spends the year in Rockford, or at least starts the season with the IceHogs, but he will be an interesting player to keep an eye on in these preseason games to see how he matches up against NHL opponents. And maybe he does crack the lineup at some point in the NHL this season, or maybe he just has an absolutely fantastic preseason and lights the world on fire and forces their hand and he makes the team out of camp. Who knows? There are surprises every single season, and if the Blackhawks are good at doing anything, it is surprising us with something. So that, I would probably say this for every line, that this is going to be an interesting line to watch. That is another one. And then we have a 4th line of Josiah Slavin centering Michael Tepley and Matt? Is that his name? Savoy. No, I'm just forgetting his first name, totally blanking on it. We're gonna go with Matt. I'm sorry if that's not your first name, but it is now for at least a little while until I check it again. Slavin, like I mentioned before, being a really good guy on the penalty kill, so if the Blackhawks end up taking some penalties tonight, we will be able to see him in action there, and I want to see Tepley matched up against NHL opponents because a lot of Blackhawks fans and people around the team always talk about his skating and how that's the knock against him, especially when it comes to making the NHL. So I want to see how he is able to keep up, see if his skating really is something that is holding him back, or if it's one of those storylines that's just been blown out of proportion. There are always things like that for every player on every team. Maybe this is one of them for Tepley, or maybe his skating really is holding him back. So it'll be, again, going back to that word, interesting to see him in game action tonight against some NHL opponents. On defense, we have Seth Jones on the first defensive pairing with Alex Vlasic. And then we have Connor Murphy on the second pairing with Kevin Korchinski. So the first round draft pick this year is getting into the first game of the preseason. He will be matched up with Connor Murphy, which is a great guy to put him with, just a solid defensive defenseman back there. So if Korchinski ends up making a rookie mistake here or there, Murphy can cover for him. And he's a good guy for Korchinski to learn from as well. So I like that pairing. And on the third defensive pairing, we have Caleb Jones matched up with Ethan Delmastro. So Delmastro getting a chance in some quote-unquote NHL action here after winning gold with Canada at the World Juniors. And his stock has really risen as a prospect ever since then. So we'll see. we'll see how he does. He's another one of those guys that likely isn't going to start in the NHL, but a guy to really keep an eye on and see how his game progresses, because one of these days, all of these kids are going to have to make an impact at the NHL level, and we just have to hope that that impact is a good one and not a negative impact. And with some of these kids, that all starts tonight in their first action, putting on that Blackhawks sweater on the United Center ice against a different team. Of course, they've been practicing against each other, but it's very, very different when you get out of scrimmages and into actual game action, even though it's only the preseason. So I'm very interested to see all of those guys, really. And then our wonderful goaltending tandem of Mrazek and Stalock will be splitting the game 50-50 tonight. We'll see how those guys look in net for the Blackhawks. There's not much else to say about this team other than the word of the season, which is interesting because that's really what it is going to be. But again, like I said about storylines to follow throughout the 2022-23 season, what we can look for tonight is what these special teams looks like, because I know that Luke Richardson, I just totally blanked on his name there for a moment, that Luke Richardson has really been working on the special teams and changing the systems around to be a bit more simple, but also more effective and more aggressive, and really push the pace of the game rather than sitting back and letting everything come to you. He wants, from what it sounds like, he wants the Blackhawks to be able to take control of plays, take control of shifts, and maybe control the game that way. That doesn't mean it's going to lead to wins necessarily, but it may be a bit more interesting, going back to that word, and exciting to watch, and put in a good system and have that in place for when the kids come up from Rockford. They can really show if they belong in the NHL yet, or if they need to be sent back down. The last few years, it seems like whenever somebody gets called up, it's almost like they're a chicken with their head cut off, just running around trying to figure it out. And some guys do that really well, and they just settle in. We've seen some of the defensive prospects do that. Regula had a nice long look here in Chicago. Josiah Slavin has been one of those guys who got a pretty decent look. Mackenzie Entwistle stuck with the Blackhawks. He's injured currently, so he won't be playing for a little bit here. But it's worked out for some guys, but for the majority, it hasn't worked out so well. But that also goes back to the Blackhawks not using the IceHogs as a development team, and now they are committed to doing that. And having Anders Sorensen coming back as the full-time head coach. Of course, he took over for Derek King last year when King was brought up, when Jeremy Colleton was fired, and Sorensen did an awesome job with the IceHogs, and it really turned around their season, and they started playing better, and they just took their job more seriously. It seemed they were more responsible on the ice. The team as a whole was pretty good defensively. They made their goaltenders' jobs easier than maybe that team has the past couple seasons. So we're hoping for more of the same down in Rockford. We'll have to wait and see when those practices and camp opens down here. And they play some preseason games next week, so we're not going to have to wait very long. But we still have to wait and see, and we will see who gets cut from the Blackhawks and sent back down. It's going to be most of them. I'm just going to tell you that right now, but of course there are always surprises. But now we just look forward to finally seeing the Blackhawks back in game action tonight. Seems like it's been about 5 years since we have seen them, and it'll be really nice to watch. It'll be a little sad because we don't have DeBrincat, but, you know, it is what it is. We just have to move on, get over it. This team is not going to be awesome this year, but hopefully we can find some fun things to talk about in the meantime. So that is going to be it for this episode of the Cozy Cast. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm sorry it wasn't on Monday. Next week it will be, but there will be a happy hour on Friday. So you can look forward to that, talk about what happened in these Blackhawks games, see what else happens in some games around the league here, see if there's any exciting storylines that come out of some of these preseason games. Shane Wright is playing tonight for Seattle. I tuned into last night's Seattle game hoping he'd be playing, but he didn't. He's playing tonight. So there's that. And yeah, that's going to be it for this one. If you want to follow along on social media, of course, I live tweet the games. You can do that. All of the links to our social media pages are in the description or in the show notes, depending on where you are watching or listening to this. If you are just listening and would like to watch, you can do that, youtube.com/c/FromCenterIce, or you can just go to FromCenterIce.com, where there are links to absolutely all of the places there. If you are interested, we now have a merch shop. It is just FromCenterIce.shop. Very easy. There's also a link to that on the website as well. You can get t-shirts, mugs, glasses, there's shoes, I think. If you want to rock some From Center Ice sandals, you can do that, but there's a bunch of different things to look at on there, a bunch of different designs. There is the main logo, there's the happy hour logo, the Comfy Cast logo, there's Comfy Cast? Cozy Cast. I don't even know what I'm talking about anymore, y'all. It is preseason, and this is what happens when I've spent the weekend and Monday trying to get my brain back into hockey action. I start forgetting people's names and forgetting the name of my own podcast. We're doing great. It sure feels like a Monday, but it is a Tuesday. Hey, anyway, you can get happy hour and Cozy Cast stuff. I knew it didn't sound right when it came out of my mouth. It was a C, it wasn't the right C. But, yeah, I'm gonna end this now before I say something else foolish. And, thank you guys so much for tuning into this. We will get more polished here as the preseason goes along and get ready for the regular season to really kick off. If there's anything that you want me to focus on more this season, especially with the Blackhawks and how different the season is going to be, let me know down in the comments if you're watching this on YouTube. If you're not, go over to the YouTube and find this video and leave your suggestions in the comments. I will read each and every one of them and take them into consideration. I know everybody's kind of interested in different pieces of the roster and of the game, so I will look at all of those. But all of that being said, thank you guys so very much again for tuning into this. It was definitely a very cozy of cozy casts with me forgetting absolutely everything, even though I had notes in front of me. It's the Mondayest Tuesday around. So thank you so much. I appreciate each and every one of you, and I will catch you all in a video after a game or on Friday for the happy hour. Enjoy your Tuesday, enjoy your week, enjoy some preseason hockey, and I will catch y'all in the next one. Bye, guys.